Out of all of these pilots, we're going to pick two because we're going to have a two-player game. We can do it two ways. You can shuffle them and pick two guys, right? And then you get to play these two pilots. Or you can alternatively go through the deck and pick two guys. In our case, we're going to play these two players, Mick Manick and Renee Funk. Go. Okay, once we have our two pilots chosen, it's time for us to decide which level that we're going to play. There are 4 levels that we can play, and each one of the pilots, as you can see, has a 1 to 4 for the skills and has a 1 to 4 for the airplanes that they can fly. And these airplanes were chosen historically, which means that these were planes that the pilots actually flew during World War I. Now, each one of the pilots, depending on the skill level that they play, has access to either 1 skill, 2 skills, 3 or 4 skills. And depending on the level that they fly, they can choose whether they can fly the level 1, 2, 3, or 4. For example, if you choose level 2, you can use level 1 airplane or level 2 airplane. If you choose level 4, you can use all the skills and you can use any of the planes from 1 to 4. Okay. Now, how do we decide which level to play? Again, 2 ways. One is we can agree amongst ourselves which level we would like to play, or if there's no consensus or you want to do it at random, you use a D4 and you roll. So whatever number you get, that's the level that you will play. For this game, we're going to fly level 2. So our pilots will have, in the case of Renee Funk, he's going to have the aggressive and the loner skill. And in case of Manic, he's going to have the mentor and ruthless skill. And they will both fly. One is going to fly the Spad, and the other one will fly the Newport 23. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to set up the cockpit, which contains all the information pertaining to the pilot's airplane. We have the maneuver levels at the top. We have our ammo levels, health level, and our petrol levels. So we look at our card and we see the type of plane that the pilot is going to fly. In our case, we chose level 2. So he will be flying a Spad S7. So we take our miniature, let me put it aside for us to know which airplane we're going to fly. Notice your cockpit 1 has to match the airplane number stand that you're using so that you know which airplane you're flying on the board. Next, we're going to set up the levels. So for the straight level, which is the middle maneuver level, we're going to go for orange. So we'll set this up at orange. And then for our left and right maneuvers is also orange. So we will set these up to orange. Next, we're going to adjust our ammo level, which is in this case for this airplane, it has 6 points. So we're going to move our dial to number 6. This means the number of bullets that you have for the mission. That's how many shots your airplane can take. Next is the health, set at 14. Health, of course, representing how many points the airplane will take before it's shut down. And last, our petrol, set at 13 in this level. Petrol represents the number of turns that you have to play within the mission. The next step that we take now is to set up our encounter end mission. These are the mission cards, and you have lots to choose from. Lots of these missions are different, so every time that you play, it will always be a different setup. What you do, you can again shuffle these and then pick one at random, right? Or you can actually pick one and decide which one you would like. In this case, we're going to pick this mission, which is a bombing run against an ammo depot against enemy lines. And this map tells us the locations of where we need to put our ground targets. And as you will see, up across the top, you have the numbers 1 to 4, which match the numbers on the board. And the numbers again, 1 to 6, which also match the numbers on the board. So we place these ground targets according to the grid as shown on the cards. So now we're going to set up the board according to the icons shown on the cards. Again, we have the numbers to follow, the top and across. And as you can see, we have numbers across the bottom and numbers on the side. So we tilt the card over so we know where to place these. In this case, we need a factory placed at numbers 2, 4. So we'll place a factory right there. The position, try to place it as roughly as possible to the middle of the square between these 4 points. The board has different points, and that's where you place the ground targets. It says here that we also have an anti-tank, which are these, and one of them goes in the middle of 3, 4, and we have another anti-tank placed at number 1, 1 in this corner. Once we set up our ground targets, we place our card to the side so that we know which mission we're flying. A very unique part of the game is that we also have weather that affects the gameplay. And what you do, you have a several number of cards from which to choose. You shuffle these and then you pick the top card to reveal what kind of weather you're going to have. And this will tell you whether you're going to have clear skies. If there are clouds, it will tell you how many thunderclouds or rain clouds and how many rain clouds there will be. There are different ones, and for our purpose, we're going to play with 3 clouds, which will give us 3 clouds and only 1 rain cloud. Okay, now we're going to set up our clouds. We need 3 clouds, we need 1 rain cloud, and it will be 2 regular clouds. These are the rain clouds with the gray border, and the white ones are the regular clouds with no rain. These have different effects. Whenever an airplane enters one of these clouds, it has a different effect, and you will see that in gameplay. How do we set up? We grab a D4 that will represent the numbers from 1 to 4, and a D6 that will represent the numbers from 1 to 6. So we grab the 2 dice and we roll, and we place a cloud wherever our dice show. In this case, a 2, 6. So first we grab one of our clouds and we place it at number 2, and 6. And we always try to place it somewhere in the middle of the square. We're going to roll for the next cloud. At 1, 4. So we're going to use number 1 and we're going to place it on number 4. And lastly, we always set up the rain cloud for last. We roll again and we go at 3, 4. 3, 4. And we place the cloud, and that's all there is. Okay, now we're going to set up the sun, because the sun also has a bonus to when you're flying. So how do we do that? We roll a d6. Okay, now that we rolled a 2, the 2 is the number represented on the long side of the board. So we place the sun token in the number 2 spot, which means that any airplane that is fully within this entire sector gets to roll the sun die. Okay, now we're going to set up the airplanes that we're going to fight for this mission. We pick our encounter deck, which is made up of a lot of different encounters. So every time that you fly the mission, a mission is going to be different. You can give it a good shuffle and then pick the top card to see how many enemies we're going to encounter during the mission. You will see that this card has from 1 to 3 players. In our case, we're doing 2-player game, and for each silhouette it represents 1 enemy plane that we're going to fight. So in our case, we have 3 enemy planes, and the icon next to it, if you see an icon on the side, this represents that one of these is going to be an ACE pilot. So we put our card down, then we're going to determine which type of ACE is going to fight against us. We pick the next card from the top and we look at the lower right corner, and that's going to tell us whether the plane that the pilot that we're going to fight is a regular ACE, an expert ACE, and in our case it will be a master ACE. Then the next step that you do is to determine the deployment of your planes, your friendly planes, and the deployment of your enemy planes. You pick the next card, you flip it over, and you look at the bottom left corner where it says deployment, and it will tell you that the enemy will start at deployment area 0, and our pilots are going to start at deployment area 1. Okay, once we have determined our encounter, we're going to place the encounter card next to our mission so that we know which encounter we're fighting. Next, we have to choose the pilot that's going to fight against us. In our case, it says that there is a master pilot coming against us. So we take the deck of cards, and in this case we have 2 master pilots, which we shuffle and we pick one at random, and that will be the plane that we're going to fight against for this mission. In our case, we will fight against Manfred von Richthofen, the Red Baron. We'll put this to the side and we'll show what to do next. Now we can get rid of this card and discard it. Now the next is the deployment zone of where we're going to start the game. The side with the numbers is the player zone, starting zone. The side without the numbers is the enemy's deployment zone. This line represents deployment area 0. Then, as you can see, there are triangles on the side, top and bottom of the board, and also on the sides. These areas are deployment zone 1, deployment zone 2, and deployment zone 3. From the middle of the board to the starting area of the player is the friendly deployment zone. From the middle of the board to the enemies is the enemy deployment zone. So for our game, the enemy will start on this zone, and our pilots are going to start on deployment zone 1. Once we determine that, we can get rid of this card. Okay, now we're going to set up the enemies that are going to fight against us. We take our airplane deck for our enemy. In this case, it's going to be the Germans. And this deck contains all the types of airplanes that we can fight against. We draw the top card from the deck and we reveal it. We look at the level of the airplane, which is described on this corner. This airplane has a level 1 and 2, which means that we can play only against pilots level 1 or 2. In our case, since we're playing level 2, then this plane is available for us to fight. We pick the next card because we have 3 airplanes to choose from. We pick another one, and again, it's a 1 and 2. Therefore, we can play against it because it's within our level 2 that we chose. Now that's for 2 airplanes. Now the third one is going to be the ace, which in our case is the master ace. For that, we don't need to pick a card. We simply pick the pilot card for that pilot, and we look at the level 2 airplane that he will be flying. So this will be our enemies for this mission. Okay, so once we have chosen our enemy pilots, we set up their cockpits according to the level of the airplane that they're going to fly. So there's the maneuvers with their ammo, petrol for each one of them. Okay, now we place the enemies on the enemy deployment zone, and we make sure that each card with its own cockpit are positioned so we have a good reference of them. Then we give each of the player their corresponding stand and airplane. So C and C, and A is going to have A and A. Okay, so now we're going to place our airplanes on their deployment zones according to the card that we chose for deployment. The players will go on deployment zone 1, and the enemies are going to go on deployment zone 0. Since we have only 2 players and there are 3 deployment points on each deployment zone, as you can see here, 1, 2, 3. On a 2-player game, we put airplanes on the outermost deployment points. And we can choose whichever one, let's say one wants to go here or on the other side. And we place them so that the back of the base touches the deployment point inside the field, like this. And you just position it as straight as possible so it's facing the enemy side. And then we're going to put number 2 on deployment zone, deployment point 1. and that would be the starting line for our airplanes. Now for the enemy side, we're gonna go with A, and these are the deployment points, same as on our side. They have 3. So A is going to go on this deployment point, B is going to go on this deployment point, and C is going to go on that deployment point, always facing forward. Okay, so the next step after that is that since these airplanes are going to be controlled by AI, artificial intelligence system for this game, they required an extra set of tokens that will remain with them for the entirety of the mission. And these would be the tokens. Each airplane has its own letter, so you give the token on the gray side to each one of the planes. The other side, the flip side of each token, has a red, and that is used for chasing. The gray side is used for targeting our planes. So we're going to give the B token to B, the C token to C, and A is going to have this token. Alright, the next thing we do is we're going to set up the first targets for the initial targets for our enemy's AI, and we'll do that in the next video. So we're going to set up now initial target for our AI enemy planes, and that's where these things, these tokens are going to come into effect. Each airplane is going to target the closest airplane to him first within its firing arc, second within its field of vision. The red zone is the firing arc of each airplane, and this line that splits the base in half is considered the line of vision. So from this line forward is the line of vision for the AI, and from here back is the backside of the airplane, where the pilot does not have a good field of vision, because he would have to turn his head to look backwards. So how do we determine first targets? You always draw the shortest line from anywhere on the base of the enemy plane to anywhere on the base, to the closest part of the base of the closest airplane to them. As you can see here, this airplane can draw a line of sight straight through to this base. Therefore, he would have initial targeting on this airplane. If he wanted to look at the other plane on the other side, he could not draw any line of sight from any part of the base, because it would be intersected by a cloud, so he cannot see this airplane. In the case of B would be able to draw a line of sight unobstructed to plane 1, but it cannot draw a line of sight to plane 2, because again the cloud is in the way. Therefore we would give B token to airplane 1 as well. And then airplane A has line of sight to both 1 and 2. However, if you draw a straight line from here to here, it's a shorter line than having to draw one from here to here. Therefore, the closest airplane would be number 2. So airplane A is going to target airplane 2. So that would be the initial targeting for the airplanes. Now what that means is that whenever they move, they will move towards their target airplane, according to where their token is. Okay, now we're getting to the heart of the game, the turn order tokens. which is what's going to decide the movement and the firing turns for each one of the airplanes in the game. These are the turn order tokens. As you can see, all of them have the same side, but on the reverse we have events, and each airplane has its own turn order token. So what we're going to do is we're going to grab all of these turn orders, we're going to turn them over, and we're going to give them a good shuffle, and we're going to show you in the next video how to set this up. Now, the event turn order token represents that whenever this token is revealed during the turn order movement phase, you draw a card from the event deck. The event deck has many different types of events that could happen during the gameplay, such as you could get an extra attack, you could get lucky against a damage, you could get an extra movement, or you could get your weapons jammed, and so on and so forth. There are different types of events that can happen during the play, and every time that you draw one of these, you reveal one of these tokens, you draw one of these cards. Okay, we're going to take now our shuffled event turn order tokens, and we're going to set them in a line, which is called the turn order line. That's step one. This is the setup. We're going to take our event cards, we're going to give it a good shuffle, and then we're going to put them on the left side of the turn order line. Okay, one more item that the pilots will require are the metal cards. These cards have different types of perks that the pilots can use during the gameplay, and you can get one. You will get one at the beginning at random. So you shuffle it and you pick one, and you can show it because it's a cooperative game. If it's a competitive game, you keep this a secret, and you apply this to your pilot. So you only have one metal card at all times. When you use it, you discard it, and you may get another one by destroying either an enemy airplane or an enemy ground target. So right now we're going to pick two for our pilots, 1, 2, and we'll assign them to their pilot cards. Another important part of the game is, of course, the damage cards, and you get lots to choose from during the game, and all of them are of different types: motors, fuselage, pilot, weapon damages, and so on. But I'd like to explain what the card means. The numbers that you see represent the level that you're playing. The red number is if you're playing level 1, and also this is the number that the AI use to damage you when you play level 1. If you play level 2, 3, or 4, you will use the numbers as represented here by level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4. And of course the card will tell you where the damage occurred and if there's anything else that you are required to do when you apply the damage. Okay, so this is what your cockpit and player area is going to look like. You will have the cockpit with all your maneuver levels and attributes set up. You'll have your pilot cards for reference to your abilities. You will have your stress token, which is used every time you do a stress maneuver. You will have your chase token, which is used when you declare a chase against a plane. And for this mission, because we're doing a bombing run, you will have, each player will get 2 bomb tokens. which will be explained later. And of course, you'll get your medal. In this case, he will have a +3 damage to an attack. Okay, these are the dice that the game uses. We have D6s, D8s, D10s, D12s, and a special die called the D6, the Sun die. Regular pilots will roll a D6. Regular ace pilots will do a D8. Expert will roll a D10, and master pilots will roll a D12. Each die has 3 different types of icons on them. There's the target, which means whenever you roll a target, it means it's a hit. You have the red target, which is only used when you're firing at short range. So if you get this target when you're doing that, then you will score a hit. Otherwise, it's considered a miss. And of course, you have the blank sides, which means that you missed on your shot. And then we have the Sun die, which gives you extra opportunities to hit an airplane. You get two sides with the targets, and the infantry figure is only used whenever infantry is firing at your airplane. So these are the dice to use in the game. Okay, these are the rulers for the game. There are 4 types. We have the range ruler, which is used for attacks. Red means short range, and black means normal range. We have the speed ruler. We have the long curve ruler, and we have the curve ruler. As you can see, there are different colored levels on each ruler. So every plane will move towards its color during its movement phase. As you saw from the setup of the airplane cockpits, some planes have a orange, red, or yellow levels for their turning and their straight maneuvers. That's where this comes into play. Okay, whatever level they have, that's where they're going to move towards. And these rulers are going to be used to perform maneuvers. And this is a cheat sheet for all the types of maneuvers that you can perform, and they're all listed here. Some maneuvers will have a stress token, which means that after you perform that maneuver, you have to put a stress token next to the airplane, because you cannot perform 2 stresses consecutively. Okay, so we will demonstrate how these work during gameplay.